Hey y'all, my name is Daphne Hoffacker. I'm the advocacy chair for the Austin Council of PTAs. Welcome to the latest in our education series leading up to Rally Day, which is part of the 89th legislative session, getting you guys ready to advocate and engage and inspire. Tonight, welcome Ash Hall from the ACLU. They are a dragon rider. I keep saying the ACPTA moms or the PTA moms are dragon riders. And by the way, ACPTA dads, honorary ACPTA. I'm sorry, PTA dads, honorary PTA moms. So don't be offended if I'm not using, if it doesn't feel inclusive. I want all y'all to join the PTA, and I want all y'all to be introduced to Ash, who is amazing and has personally defeated 260, or been part of defeating 260 really bad bills. And there's a lot of horrible stuff that happens down at the legislature. And Ash is a master at convincing people who do not agree with them that the right thing to do is to kill these bills or to advocate for doing the right thing. I'm gonna let you explain it because I'm not doing a very good job. So y'all, welcome to Ash Hall. Please use the chat to put in your questions, and we will answer questions probably at the end. But if they seem important, Ash, we might interrupt you.
No, that's totally fine. And I know some folks are hopping on real quick. There we go. Awesome. But yeah, thanks for the warm introduction. Yeah, my name's Ash Hall. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a policy and advocacy strategist at the ACLU of Texas, and I specialize in LGBTQIA plus rights. And I've been doing legislative advocacy for, I think this is my 8th session now. So the math is somewhere over a decade. And it has been a really interesting journey. I will say it used to be a little bit easier to convince people to, act in favor of justice, equity, compassion, inclusion than it is today. That being said, there's still people who have open minds who are willing to listen to us when we step forward and talk about the things that we care about. And so we're just going to go over some of those things today and talk about ways that you all can be effective when you are speaking with people who maybe aren't starting from the same place on an issue as you are. So first, before I step into that, can y'all give me a small rundown of some of the things you're looking to fight for or against in the legislative session?
You all just unmute and speak out. I'm going to say funding and vouchers, special ed, funding for sure, but I'll let other people speak out as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say for funding and against vouchers.
Same, for funding and against vouchers.
Same, plus I have interest in environmental and resource conservation issues, so I would love for the state to advocate at the federal level to have tax credits for clean energy and energy efficiency and electric vehicles continue, because that's going to really support our schools that are trying to electrify bus fleets and reduce energy use and install solar at schools and things like that. So fight for IRA incentives to keep on flowing.
I'm going to add to that during the session, sorry, Ashley, didn't mean to interrupt. We are very focused on special education, but also protecting our LGBTQ plus youth who are always, seems like relentlessly under attack here in this state. Because at the PTA and the ACPTA, our job is to take care of every single kid. And so we don't slice and dice and parse and decide who's worthy and who's not. We love everybody, and we take that message everywhere we go. So I want to make sure that that's included. We have legislative priorities and we would share them. We can share them, but it is important to us to take care of every single kid, and that means every single kid.
Much appreciated. Yeah, it's okay. So what I'm hearing is like definitely a big focus on defeating vouchers, making sure that there's adequate funding for public education, and I'm assuming teachers goes along with that. Making sure that all of the students are protected no matter what their identities are. Things like that makes a lot of sense. Certainly all things I agree with. So in terms of the ways to approach these topics, I think the number one thing to know beforehand is the political environment and what you're heading into. So you all probably know some of this already, but our governor made a point to try and beat out any Republicans on the House side in particular who were anti-voucher, and he was largely successful in doing that. And so we don't have the numbers that we used to defeat vouchers. I do believe that we still have good numbers for increasing funding. I think there is a very good chance that you all will be successful on that this year. And in terms of protecting students, that's going to be really tricky, and actually your advocacy stands to make quite a difference there, because I think they're going to be hearing from all sorts of different people on what protecting students looks like, and it's important that they hear from you about what protection really means. So being aware of political realities, some of what that looks like is knowing that there are going to be offices that you go to where a legislator and their staff may actually agree with you on absolutely everything you're talking about, but they may feel like they can't vote the way that you want them to. And when that happens, that doesn't mean the conversation has to be over. We know at this point that most bills in the legislature die out because there's only 140 days to get them passed. And so things you can ask people to do instead of voting the way that you want them to, if you can't convince them to do that, you can ask them to help slow it down so there's more time for meaningful conversations between the public and legislators. So there's more time for legislators to figure out how to make this voucher bill less harmful, things like that. You can ask people to slow things down. It's also a good idea to figure out if there are maybe amendments or things that legislators are interested in adding to different bills that might make them either less harmful or more likely to pass. So for vouchers, that can look like limiting who all will have the vouchers. It can look like taking out things that make it more harmful to public schools, things like that. So something to keep in mind with your political realities. In addition, there's going to be people that are not interested in talking at all, and that's okay. There's plenty more people that will be interested in the conversation than there will be people who are not. Best thing to do if somebody's trying to politely shut you down is to go ahead and head out of that office before they try to escalate it, because even though a lot of these staffers and legislators are supposed to treat the public with dignity and respect, there are a few of them who have the wrong idea about who is working for who, and they won't treat people very well. Offices that come to mind for this are ones like Brian Harrison or Tony Tenderholt. So those are offices that I don't usually visit. But there's plenty more Republicans that I happily go and visit, even though I know that we don't start off in the same place in terms of where we're coming from. Examples like that being our speaker, Mr. Burrows, Republicans like Sam Harless or Charlie Guerin, folks like that. So you're not limited to just asking people to vote yes or no for a bill. There's a couple of different options. The other thing to keep in mind is that even if you have a conversation with somebody and it doesn't go as planned, that's not a failure on your part, because it is very likely that something that you have said will make them think, and you never know how that's going to change their behavior down the line. I have examples of this in my own advocacy. There were bills that I testified against in the past that would have made it possible for doctors to basically use religion as an excuse to discriminate against LGBTQIA plus patients and not treat them. And I gave testimony talking about my own experiences, where I had attended very, very briefly a private school and seen a therapist who could have refused to see me but didn't. And ultimately led me to realize that I needed to transfer out of that school and be in a place that was more accepting. And so there was a Republican that really heard what I said on that particular committee hearing. And in a separate room, when they were debating how to vote on that bill, he said, I'm concerned about what this bill would do to people like Ash. And that slowed down that conversation, and ultimately that helped to defeat that bill. So the things that you say in those rooms today, even if you don't get the answers you like, they can affect legislation tomorrow, days down the line, weeks down the line. There's no way to know until it happens. So just want to preface all of that. So that being said, yes, you're going to go into this building and there's going to be a lot of people who have really heard one side of the voucher fight, which is the people that voted for them in their primaries. And we're looking at talking to them about what we would like to see, what things are like from our perspective. And I'm just using vouchers as an example here. It could be any number of the issues that we brought up. So here are the things that I think about when I go into the building and I know that I need to talk to folks that are not initially going to agree with me. The first thing that I think about is, where do they come from? What part of the state are they from? What did they campaign on? And what values might I have in common with them? And I don't mean values like, their version of preserving family values. That means two very different things to us. I'm not going to go in there with that argument. That being said, we might have a value in common like the right to privacy, or we might have a value around making sure that parents are involved in their children's lives and education. There's going to be something in there where we share a value and we may approach that value differently, but that shared value is a starting point for a conversation. And so I immediately know, once I identify that that's how I'm going to open my conversation, is talking about, I think we can all agree, like, we appreciate this particular value that we have in common, whether that's privacy, the best public education possible or best education possible for our children, making sure all of our kids have a fair shot at a good education, whatever that value is. I like to start with that. From there, I usually end up telling a personal story that has to do with why I see a particular issue the way that I do. In this case, it could be because there's a teacher that you appreciate, that you want to see get the wages that they deserve. It could be you're worried about kids having access to a quality education, or being able to really have access to programming that would fall into the DEI category. It could be, concerns about students being able to even continue learning and focusing in school because they're scared of facing discrimination in class. You tell that story, whether it's about a teacher, about yourself, about your kids, your students, whatever that personal piece is that brings you into this particular fight. You try to circle back to that value again and how that ties into that particular story. You can acknowledge then that, this person hasn't necessarily seen this issue the way that you do, but you can ask them if they can appreciate where you're coming from, and then ask if there are ways that we can identify for a particular issue, a way to make it better or easier, or whatever the case may be, for the people that are going to be impacted by that bill. So I usually do it kind of in that order. I focus a lot on that value. I make sure to have that personal story. If you have statistics and things like that, absolutely feel free to bring those in. I wouldn't spend as much time talking about statistics as I would personal stories, because I can promise you at this point, the legislators have lots of statistics from all sorts of nonprofits and agencies, so on and so forth. They're not going to know your story, though. You're the expert of your story, of your community story, you name it. And so that's what they really need to hear. They need to hear about the real life impact of what these bills could do to families, teachers, students, working class Texans, you name it. So I go in with that and then tie that value back into it and ask about how we can work together on this bill to come to a place of agreement, or is there anything that this legislator might be able to do to slow down this bill so it can be improved? Or can we convince you to vote no on it? Or can we get you to vote yes on it? You have to think a lot about what you're going to ask that legislator for, probably in advance of the meeting. But keep in mind, as the conversation goes on, you may find that they're more open to taking actions that you did not initially think they would. And you're allowed to change what you ask for then. You may have been going into a legislative conversation ready to ask somebody if they would be willing to help slow down a bill or to add an amendment to it, and find that actually they're willing to vote no against a bill after hearing your story. It's okay to decide to change what you're going to ask at the end. Nothing wrong with that. Plans change all the time. I've been surprised before by what people are willing to do to be helpful. That being said, if, I try that and I can't get the answer that I'm looking for, I'm still going to thank that person for their time. And I'm going to write probably a follow-up email to that office thanking them for meeting with me. I may lay out some points that I didn't get to lay out when I was talking to them, because we all do that, right? We go into conversations, we discuss what we need to discuss, and then 5 minutes after we leave, we're like, dang, I wish I'd remembered to say this. So it's always okay to add more to it. And really, I think one of the goals needs to be to kind of keep that conversation going. I think a lot of people see meetings with legislators as being transactional. You show up for one day, you ask them to do this thing, they say yes or no, you go back to your life and you keep kind of watching what happens with the legislature and hoping for the best. Really, the best way to do advocacy is to see all of this as an opportunity to build a relationship, whether that's with staffers, a legislator, the whole office, you name it. And so even if you don't live close to the Capitol, even if you don't have a lot of time to go and make visits, you can still keep corresponding by email. You can make phone calls. There's multiple ways that you can stay in touch with these folks. But what I like my goal to be, as someone that does this professionally, but also as somebody that used to do this just as a super committed activist, is I wanted to be able to walk into rooms and immediately have staff greet me by name. So if you have the time or capacity to do that, go for it. If not, that's okay. I just think if we keep conversations going, we're more likely to find common ground, and we're more likely to get people to make decisions about bills that are actually helpful instead of perpetuating harm. So off the top of my head, that's the most solid advice that I have. Do you all have any questions? Do you have things you want to lay out for me to think through with you? Like, I definitely want to hear from y'all.
Hi.
And
So,
sorry.
yes, sorry, my bad. So I'm a student journalist and I tend to very much focus on the ways that advocacy impacts education. Sometimes it's difficult for me to wade through all of the jargon that gets thrown around with regard to things like vouchers. I remember attending a conference on vouchers last year and being super overwhelmed. How can I make this more accessible to people who might not fully understand the issue? Even beyond just talking to legislators and talking to staffers.
That is a great question. Because yeah, especially with vouchers, which I mean, I have to say for work purposes, the ACLU does not take an official stance on vouchers. And now that I've crossed that off my list, vouchers can be really difficult for people to understand. It's tricky and it feels like they keep getting rebranded every 2 years. And so I can understand why that would be the question. I think what I've seen that's been helpful is organizations or journalists or advocates, whoever it is, being willing to define what that is for people and immediately lay out what it's been used for traditionally, what changes the legislature is suggesting to it, and how that would affect the average person. That's the main stuff that you're going to need to help people understand it. Because if we just do definitions, that doesn't tell people what the effect is. If we're missing the history, people are not necessarily going to understand why this would be something we oppose, because on its face, it sounds like we're expanding access to education. We understand, of course, that's not exactly how this works. And if, of course, if we don't have definitions, then people don't even know what we're talking about and they zone out the second we're talking. So I think you have to have all of those in order to help people better understand these issues. And there are some new legislators, if you're concerned about them not understanding, like that is something that you can offer to them too. But yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that you would need to help people understand this. And, don't be afraid to, define some of that jargon for them so that people understand what the legislature or the media is talking about when these issues come up. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Oh, before you go, Nick, Miss Candace, I believe, was queued up first.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry.
So the question I'm gonna ask is probably very rudimentary, but so for example, if I wanted to go, I guess, and okay, so for the SB2, how does one know? Do I search the articles? The authors of the bill. Who do I know who to go talk to and advocate to, about it? I guess is what I'm asking. Who do I need to contact? Who do I need to, where do I start with that? I guess is what I'm asking. Who do I know who to contact for it?
Absolutely. That is a great question too. You'd think it'd be easier to figure that out, but not so much.
Okay.
There's a few different ways you can go about it. The shortcut way, I would say, is to follow an organization like the American Federation of Teachers of Texas and see who they're talking about and who they recommend talking to. They will usually lay that out for you in things like emails, action alerts, things like that.
Okay, well then never mind. Because I'm a part of this one, so I got that part of it then. Daphne.
Awesome. Yeah, you can take shortcuts for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to do it yourself, without looking up what other people are doing, the thing that I remind people of is everybody's got a state rep and a state senator. You can always talk to that person. Granted, if all of you are in Austin, it's pretty likely that they agree with you on everything. So, you don't have to worry too much there.
Okay.
The other thing that you can do is you can track a bill using Texas Legislature online.
Yeah.
There's ways to do that. They actually make it pretty easy to do step by step on how to track a bill. And really what you're going to want to wait for in the case of most Senate bills, I wouldn't even bother too much with the Senate because they do whatever the lieutenant governor tells them to do. So I usually wait and I see where bills get referred to in the House, what committees those go to. Then I look up who's going to be on those committees, and that's who I talk to. And
Thank you.
Yeah, that's how I do that usually.
Thank you. That answered my question exactly.
Perfect. All right, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Yeah, that was good advice there about waiting to talk to the people in the House. And I guess my question is kind of related is when now you do this professionally, but when you were doing it non-professionally, how do you get that meeting? Do you just show up? Do you email them ahead of time and set up an appointment? Or, once you find the person to talk to, how do you approach that meeting? How do you know that they're there?
Yeah.
How does that work?
The first thing to keep in mind is that 9.5 times out of 10, you will probably be talking to a staffer. That is okay. You don't have to talk to the legislator to make your words reach them or to have an effect on them, because every staffer that has a meeting is supposed to report back to their boss who they spoke to, what was said, what stood out. So don't worry too much about talking to a legislator directly. That being said, there's a few different ways that you can talk to staffers. Some offices do require you to set a meeting. And so I believe every single legislator's email address for their office is up on the Texas Tribune directory. There's going to be other sources too where you can find that.
We have that.
Perfect. So you can email those offices and ask to set up a meeting to talk about XYZ issue. And usually that scheduler will help make that happen. There are some offices though that don't require a meeting. And if you've run out of time or you have last minute inspiration, you can go ahead and drop into an office and see if they have time to chat. And some of them will. And so you have two different options there. The appointment one's usually the safest way to guarantee you'll get to talk to somebody, but I've had a lot of luck just showing up and seeing if the person that works on my issue area is available to chat for a few minutes.
Okay, and you don't have to be one of their constituents,
No.
just potentially be impacted.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, and they're usually not very good legislators, I have to tell you, but some of them are very picky and will only speak to constituents. The reason they're not really supposed to do that from a public service perspective is because they do serve on committees that affect all Texans. So they should be open to talking to anybody who's affected by the bills they work on.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that aren't as good won't do that. A lot of them will, though. And so you don't have to be a constituent. They will ask you, and, you know, it may change the way that they talk about the meeting to the legislator, because they'll mention that you weren't a constituent, but that's okay. Because they'll mention that it was about committee related work, and they should still take what you say into consideration.
And we do have the contact information divided by committees to like the Senate Education Committee. We have all of their information. Everything that we post on the ACPTA resource folder that includes that contact information, those are people that are fair game. You just say, hey, you know, I'm a public education advocate, I'm a mom, and you sit on the Senate Education Committee. I shouldn't have said Senate. We're not going to bother with the Senate. Senate we can call. I don't know that we want to bother visiting them unless we visit in large groups at some point. But I think we're going to focus our energy on the House, and we will have those committee hearings, committee assignments, I think on Thursday, right?
Yeah, they keep pushing it back, but we're supposed to get the House committee assignments this week. The original rumor was today, now it's Thursday. We'll see what happens. Honestly, the longer they go without assigning committees, the better for us, because that's just more days that they don't have to pass bills.
Mm-hmm. And actually, do you have any sense how quickly they're going to jump? I'm sorry, Kevin. Like once they have committee hearings, I know they're slow rolling right now, but they don't, it's not like they assign a committee and then the next week they jump in and have a public hearing. I mean, Senate did that, but they're different beasts. I mean, my sense is it's always a couple weeks.
Usually, the exception will be for the governor's emergency items, right? And unfortunately, some of your issues are definitely emergency items.
Yeah.
So there's always a possibility that it'll happen the week after. That being said, I think the House is probably still trying to figure out what their version of vouchers in particular is going to look like. And so I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect it to be a few weeks, but I do want you to be prepared that it could be next week if they really want to. So you just have to kind of be prepared. I think the motto I use a lot in my head is hurry up and wait. That's a lot of what the legislative session is for folks like us.
Kevin, I know I stepped on you. I'm
Oh
gonna let
yeah.
you.
Ash. So I was wondering, not really worried about how the legislators in Austin are going to vote, but how can we support them? Like our legislators at all? because I know, like us talking about against vouchers to them, like, Donna Howard is against vouchers, so I don't have to like, go up through the office for her. But what can we do besides, can we help like legislators out, the Austin legislators out, you think?
That's a great question. There's a number of ways to do that. The first is just calling or emailing just to say thank you for supporting us on this particular issue. As you might expect, legislators usually get a lot more hate mail and angry phone calls than they do kind ones. And so things like that can actually brighten up a whole office for a day. So something to consider. The other thing to keep in mind is as bills move through the process, there will be a point where there are debates taking place on the House floor, and our legislators may need stories that they can tell to talk about why a bill would have a profound impact on Texans. If you want, you can send them in your story and mention like you have my permission to tell this story as needed to fight this bill or to pass this bill, whatever the case may be. So that's also an option. The other thing you can do is just ask them, like if there's anything you can do that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Awesome. Great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Great question.
Anybody else have any questions?
So, I guess I have another. So it's less of a question, more of a comment. When you mentioned including like that this is like a specific committee related issue, I found that to be very helpful because, to be honest, every time I've emailed a state representative, or like I always feel so awkward if I'm not a constituent, and like it says usually on their websites that you're not supposed to email them if you're not a constituent. And so it really discourages you from doing that. I've done it a couple of times anyway, but it's kind of like there's not a very positive like view of non-constituents emailing them. And so yeah, it has been really challenging trying to get people to like speak up on certain things.
Yeah, and unfortunately it wasn't always like that. They used to be a bit more open to it, but I think that was more in the era of, we're talking 10 years ago. As time has gone on, they've gotten pickier and more closed off, in particular as they've taken on really intense, controversial issues where they hear from Texans all over the state about opposing bills that they feel like they have to pass for political reasons. And so they're less eager to hear from people unless they absolutely have to, so they discourage it. And these folks do work for us. They're elected officials, they're public servants. They are supposed to hear from the public. And so, yeah, framing it as you work on this committee and you're going to hear this bill and this bill affects me, that's perfectly fine. And if they have a problem with it, that's their problem. It's not yours.
You are right in that some of these people are very challenging to get a hold of, and kind of on purpose. TA, I see your hand is up. You're muted, love.
Thank you. I want to apologize. I joined late and time got past me. But anyway, during the last legislative session, what I was really angry about and was the fact that I did a lot of calling and never got a response back or an acknowledgement that they even, got my call. And so I would email and I would call and say, I haven't heard back from you. I need an answer to my question. And so it seems like they're doing more and more of that. And some of these clerks of theirs can be very rude. And I encountered that. And so when they were, I would specifically email that representative and tell them, how it went. because they do have to know. They can be disrespectful, and I understand everybody's under stress and everything, but so am I. And especially if I'm a voter and I live in your district, you need to listen to me, good or bad. So I think, for all of us, it's uh carry your anger with you, carry it and keep at it. And that's, I just wanted to share that because it can be a very frustrating time.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And yeah, we talked a little bit about how there are some legislators that are not doing their jobs and their staffers are not doing their jobs. And
Mhm.
they are supposed to listen, especially to their constituents. And if you've been putting up with bad behavior from somebody that represents you directly, that's pretty egregious. And I would want to know
Mhm.
more about that.
Yeah.
But, they should also be listening to folks based on the committees that they serve on, or just based on the fact that like somebody cared enough to reach out to them specifically. It could be because they authored a bill. It could be because they're on a specific committee, you name it. They're supposed to listen.
Mhm.
And the folks that are not doing that are not doing their jobs well. There's not a whole lot that we can do about that ourselves, but
Right.
like you said, anger is important fuel that we can use to make sure that we persist, that we remain dedicated to our cause, and to remind us why we're in this fight in the first place. So
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
if, one or two offices don't treat you the way that they are supposed to treat you, there will be at least twice as many that will treat you the way that you should be treated. And so it's going to continue to be worth it to reach out anyway.
Mhm. And when I just want to be clear that when I say anger, I don't mean, getting on the phone and cussing them out or anything like that, but being forceful and clear as to why I'm calling, and I don't want to be wasting my time with someone who says publicly they're going to represent me and they're not doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't figure I would have to tell this group, like, try not to swear at the legislators.
Right.
Yeah, try not to make any threats. We don't want
Mhm.
DPS visits.
Right.
But yeah, I figured y'all don't need to hear that, and you know this.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
Exactly.
but you all know at this point, like anger can be used in ways that are healthy and provide energy to you, things like that. And so whatever emotions you're feeling, there's always going to be ways to harness those to keep moving forward and taking action.
Mhm.
And if anything, what I would do is encourage you all to make sure that you're taking breaks to rest and take care of yourselves,
Mhm.
because the legislative session, 140 days in the scheme of things, is both short and long, and it is a marathon and not always a sprint. And so
Mhm.
taking that time to also breathe, take care of yourself, focus on doing something that you love, all of that stuff's going to be just as important as making these calls, these visits, making these emails, all of that.
Mhm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Really, really quickly, I sent a message in the chat, if anyone read it. Like, I would just like to know that people at least read it. That's all. Because yeah, anyway.
Absolutely. Beatrix is a student journalist. Which school are you with, love?
Oh, I go to McCallum,
Yeah,
which, yeah, we had the homophobic protesters twice. Yeah, verbally harassing students. It was a great time.
these kids are seasoned veterans in this kind of battle, uh, against our children.
It's wild. Yeah. No, and I mean, that too, those are stories legislators need to hear. And, you know, part of my job too is helping them understand the connection between their rhetoric, the words that they say, and the bills that they talk about or pass, and, making them see the way that it affects culture, it affects safety, it affects, the rate of hate crimes or discrimination or harassment, things like that. So those stories are important. And if you can help legislators to see how these things are tied together, that can be really important and it can be helpful.
And do you mind if I quickly add on to that? One of the
Sure.
ways that we could make large scale change is affecting public opinion. Lloyd Doggett was talking about that this weekend, Congressman Doggett, affecting public opinion. We all have the power to do that. And Beatrix, you as a journalist shining a light on this stuff is actually really, really huge. But we can use, and we have the power to do this, to use our own personal channels, our relationships with our friends and family, our social media, using the power of the media. Lots of really good reporters right now digging deep, trying to figure out what's going on here in this state. So don't be afraid to tell your stories to everybody. The legislators are one audience and they're the ones making the final vote. But if you tell 50 people your story, and then those 50 people, even if just 5 of them, then reach out to the representative and say, hey, have you heard about this? That impact is huge. They don't really want to be the bad guys. A lot of them are just in a bubble and they don't fully realize the impact of what they're doing. And so very kindly, we can be part of making those wholesale changes. I'm going to stop talking now. I know other people have questions. And we still have about 12 minutes left. I see Claire had to leave. So, bye, Claire. Thank you so much for coming. Nick, did you have a question? Or I can't see everybody. So if there's somebody who's been raising their hand for a while, please step up. I can see Nick.
I don't have maybe a coherent question, but I do. I liked what you said about trying to find a common value, because I think for me from the outside, not having interfaced with these people in person, it seems hard with some of the stuff that gets passed, hard to think that they care about anything other than, I don't know, money and power, and that's a very cynical point of view. But I know you've met with these people and formed relationships, and you made a comment about maybe some of them feel like, hey, they're in a bind. They don't necessarily want to pass something, but they're kind of put in a position where to maintain their position, they have to vote in a certain way. But I guess I'm just interested in kind of how you find that common ground, or how do you kind of understand what motivates them and what has the potential to move them?
Great question. And I mean, for some folks, like, it is money and power, and with that, I can just do my best. But recognize that I'm not going to have as much of an effect on them as their voters will, and that's why thinking about how we talk to the public is really important, because we can inspire people's voters to then reach out to them or vote a certain way, you name it. But in terms of folks with other values and figuring out what they are, there's a few places to get hints, right? One is like their websites. Their campaign websites can help in particular, but also even just seeing what their latest press release has been, and identifying some of the words that they use in that. And then some of it is just kind of knowing what it is that conservatives value and kind of the way that they think. So for example, we know that they're very patriotic. They have strong beliefs in America. They may not see America the way that we do, but we know that they're proud of that. They're proud of being Texan. And so, like, one example is starting off by saying, like, something about how great it is to be in this state and how, we all want to have the best education system in the nation because Texas should be number one at everything. It sounds silly to say it, but honestly, like, things like that really do make a difference. It can be something like that. It can be something you read on the campaign site. Other things that we've heard conservatives talk about, and it's going to sound familiar, it's things about freedom. It's about independence. It's about, y'all know some of the buzzwords that they use. I'm sure you can think of at least 3 more. And so it's really a matter of taking a word that's almost as nebulous as freedom or independence and figuring out how that value fits in with what it is that you're fighting for, and helping them see that there is more than one way to look at this issue and still be true to those values.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would say campaign websites, press releases. You can even look at their social media if you want and see what they're talking about. Like, you will glean a number of their values from the way that they talk. Although I honestly would stay off Twitter because they are pushed to talk much more severely on there than they actually think and feel. So I would ignore that. But, you know, if you happen to be following them on Facebook, they tend to be a little calmer on there. But yeah, those are just like a few places to look if you want personal ideas. And similarly, you know, most of them have their bios posted up somewhere. There's things that you can glean from that too that they might care about based on the experiences that they talk about having.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great point.
Now, would this be for like addressing an entire committee or like a certain person or both?
This advice is more about addressing like one person at a time. Because committees are made up of all sorts of different people, right? You know, you're going to have some Republicans, you're going to have some Democrats. There's like really two different kinds of Republicans and Democrats, each just within those parties. So, you know, doing a little bit of research on folks that you know you might be able to move can go a long way. And I mean, thankfully, there's quite a few of you here. And so once we get the House Education Committee, who's going to be on that, the members for that, y'all could literally divide and conquer and do research on every single person on it and get a good idea of what their values are, what their experiences are, and ways that you might think about talking to them. It'd probably be effortless for this group.
Famous last words, Ash. But
Y'all seem very capable to me. Like, you've had really good questions. Like, you know what you're about. The fact that you're aware that our legislature is meeting in the first place is more than like half the state does. So like, I'm confident with this group.
why we love you. Absolutely. This is a very competent, capable group. And actually, Lori is our ACPTA president. She's here on this call, and she is the queen of this. This is like her thing, is making those connections and finding those connections. And yeah, you are speaking to the right people, my friend. Does
Yeah.
anybody else? We've got 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have any final questions? And then we'll give Ash a chance to kind of have some final thoughts. And then, you know me, y'all, I'll have to say something at the end as well. This is your chance, yo. We have one of our leading advocates in Texas right here in the house.
Yeah.
You're
This-
very kind.
If
wanted
I
to-
were to ask you today, Ashley, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I called you Ashley and you're called Ash.
Just Ash.
Okay. Well, Ash, if I were to ask you today, where we are on the scale of 1 to 10, where are we with the hopes of blocking what's going on?
Blocking vouchers.
Yes, blocking vouchers.
With 1 being really low chance, 10 being a high chance of blocking.
High chance of blocking for 10, yes.
I believe in y'all's ability to handle the truth. Realistically, I think you're somewhere between a 3 and a 4 right now.
Okay.
The governor's pushing this really hard, and he will keep bearing down on a number of Republicans on the House side until they give up. And so at this point, yes, keep fighting it, keep trying to get it blocked. But at the same time, think about ways that the bill could be even slightly improved so it would be less harmful to people, and maybe work that into for fighting it. The way I usually put that is, my ideal for this particular bill is that you don't vote for it and it dies. And if it absolutely has to pass, here's what I would like for the bill to say or not say.
I appreciate those words.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mhm.
Yeah, it's an uphill fight. And I've been in the position that y'all are in before a couple of times over now, and it's not easy, but you keep fighting, you see what improvements that you can make, and then when something does pass, you figure out how to move forward as a community.
This time, last session, we thought we lost the voucher battle already.
Right. And you didn't. So
So
surprises happen.
I appreciate your honest assessment. I actually think we're going to kick their ass, and we're going to take care of this. We're moms. We're on the job.
I love it. No, I want to be wrong about that. Because this is mostly just based on talk that I've heard in the building, but there's a lot of people that have talked a big game about passing a bill and they've been very wrong. So I would be so delighted to be wrong about this. Like, please prove me wrong. I would love that.
It is my goal to prove you wrong, Ash.
Let's
We're
go.
gonna do this
Yep.
the whole session. We're gonna have a. I was gonna say drink. I didn't even know if you drink. Somebody got upset with me
know.
because I'm always like throwing out drinks. I didn't even drink.
Drink a Diet Coke.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna get Ash into my garden before all is said and done. Ash is gonna spend some time with me and my sunflowers.
Yes, please. Oh, yeah. What's up, Jen?
Gosh, I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us and sharing your insights. Really appreciate it. Is there anything we can support that you're actively working on? Are there bills we should be tapped into as well?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's
Maybe
see.
top 2 or 3.
Yeah, top 2 or 3. Well, we will have the All In for Equality Advocacy Day coming up in March. And so if you go on pretty much any of those organizations' websites, whether that's Equality Texas or ACLU of Texas, Texas Freedom Network, we're all going to have a link to it somewhere on the website. Definitely feel free to join us on that day. It should be an exciting day to be in community and to have some meetings and do the stuff we've been talking about, especially trying to protect trans people and trans kids. So definitely welcome y'all on that. Another thing is my org, ACLU of Texas. We're starting up something that we're calling sort of a legislative advocates program that y'all are also more than welcome to join. What that will look like is myself or some of my colleagues will probably take turns, I'm not sure. We will meet up on Zoom every now and then with folks that sign up and just give them updates on what's happening in the legislature on a particular issue area that we cover. I think the ones that would affect y'all the most would probably be LGBTQIA+, which is mine, free speech, and probably immigration. So feel free to check those out. In terms of legislation that we're looking out for, a lot of it does have to do with schools. And so obviously y'all's biggest fish are going to be vouchers, pay and funding, things like that. But, if you're hearing that someone might try to amend a really good bill with something that hurts trans kids, for example, or, you see a bill come up in House Education that's anti-LGBTQ+, absolutely, please feel free to show up, speak out against those, make it clear that the trans community in particular is far from alone, but LGBTQIA+ folks in general are far from alone. So, I mean, an example is I know that the Senate is going to look at passing a Don't Say Gay bill. And I think we can defeat that in the House, but the more people that the members hear from on that, the better off we're going to be.
Wait, I'm so sorry. By a Don't Say Gay bill. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, the more accurate thing to say would be don't say LGBTQ. But what that entails is teachers, faculty, staff, administrators in schools aren't allowed to talk about gender, sexuality, no talks about pronouns. Oftentimes there can be a curriculum component in it where you're not allowed to have particular books or curriculum items based on the identities of the authors, writers, you name it. If you yourself as an educator are in the LGBTQIA plus community, you're not supposed to talk about it. If a student is a member of the community, you're not supposed to talk to them about it. And then there's a lot of stuff that's missing from it. Like there's no advice in it for teachers on what to do if a student brings up an issue around gender and sexuality. There's nothing there. And so, you know, there's a lot of holes in it that make it easier for teachers to get punished just for being in conversation with their students. But, you know, suffice to say, it's a super discriminatory bill. It's designed to make LGBTQIA plus teachers and students feel ashamed and scared to be in public settings with their peers. So we're gonna work harder than ever to defeat it this time around too. And, you know, last session, we were concerned that it was gonna pass and we destroyed it. And so we're gonna do it this time. But again, the more voices we have from education speaking out against it, the better off we're all gonna be.
I will say, on a personal and anecdotal level, that would like closet half my teachers.
Yep. No, that's often how that goes. And the whole idea is to make it shameful to be a member of that community again. And so, yeah, it's designed to hurt every member of the community, whether they're faculty, staff, teacher, student.
And this happened in Florida, right? It passed into law.
It did. And I'm
Florida.
actually waiting back. I'm waiting to hear back about some data that we can get on that or some anecdotes on how that has gone over there, because I imagine there are some pretty rough stories. And I intend to bring some of that before legislators here and basically just say, like, do you really want that here? Because I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Well, in the interest of time, I wish we could talk to Ash all night long, but we
I
sure
would be down, but there's lots for us to do.
yes, there is. And we need to do more social stuff. So to Ash's point, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Please find your joy, find your community. We are here for you. We are a large, loving group of parents who not only love on the students, but we love on each other and we love on everybody we possibly can. And that is really important in a state where there's really a lot of hate. We defeat them by joining together. They're trying to separate us. They're trying to give us vouchers. They give us $10,000 and send us off into the wilderness to compete against who knows what, right? Like they're trying to separate our LGBTQIA plus students and make them feel separate and not part of our community. And we defeat this by re-engaging, doubling down on the thought and the effort of community, the ideas of bringing everybody in and inclusiveness. I say all the time, diversity is humanity. Humanity has always been diverse, and accepting humanity is accepting diversity. Equity is justice. Justice, right? This is about making sure that everybody is served. Inclusion is really about community. And so if you think about those things, if you think about humanity, justice, community, those are fundamental conservative values. Those are the values I grew up with. And they are fundamental to our conservative friends. And how we got so far away from that, I don't know. But we need to bring them back in. We need to bring them back in with very clear language, very direct questions, relentless decency, relentless honesty in a world where there's so much misinformation and so much in-your-face dishonesty. Many of us here are moms. And if you've ever been a mom, you have faced down a tiny tyrant. We have seen people lie to our face so convincingly that we almost believe that they didn't do it when we know full well they did it. That is the life that we lead. We solve complex problems every single day. We are the people who can solve this problem. We are the people who can make big change. We are the people who are already protecting our children and protecting our teachers and protecting our schools. So joining together, including everybody, doubling down on community, that's how we solve this problem, and use every single bit of breath you have while you have it to share, spread the word, tell the truth, tell everybody you know. We will be, the ACPTA, we will be down at the Capitol a lot, and we encourage you to come. We have an Our House open house next Monday, February 17th. That's from 1 to 4 p.m. that is a student holiday and a teacher PD day. So please bring your students, come down, learn how to advocate. We're going to be doing activities and games and just helping people get comfortable with the process of going down. One of the games is a scavenger hunt, and you're going to be literally going around and meeting your representatives and talking to them. So I encourage you all to come. It's a drop-in from 1 to 4. If you feel like helping us out and volunteering, reach out. I could use some extra help. Although to Ash's point, we have a fantastic team here. On the other side of that, the next Saturday, this coming Saturday is Save Our Schools Rally. Y'all, we got to save our schools. That's Saturday. Everybody is coming to that. All of the advocacy organizations will be represented. Please show up, bring your families. I think it's 11 to 1. I think it's at the South Steps. I'm actually one of the organizers, so you'd think I would know. But there are posters going up everywhere. Then 2 days later, our own ACPTA Rally Day. We have already over 200 people signed up to come. We're going to have t-shirts. We have t-shirts on order so that we are a unified group, a block, which honestly is one of our keys to success, is them seeing that we are unified, that we are a community, and showing up looking alike, I think is a big part of, our efforts there. So if you haven't RSVP'd already for Rally Day, you can go on our website. Our website is good and getting better. AustinCouncilPTA.org/advocacy. There is also in the carousel, you'll see a link to Rally Day. It has a lot of information and the opportunity to RSVP. If you RSVP, then it'll put you on our radar that you want, or it gives you a chance to get on our radar that you might want a t-shirt. We're selling this. We got an anonymous donation, and we worked out a deal with Austin Screen Printing. And so we're able to sell these t-shirts for $5. Please, join in our effort to show community. We're also offering lunches for those of you who need that convenience. So when you RSVP, you'll have that opportunity. And then after that, y'all, we're going to be going to hearings. We're going to be showing up. We're going to be speaking out. Every week I do a Make It Matter Monday blog post. So look on our website, on that advocacy page, you'll see the blogs. We have the last 6 blogs up there. Make It Matter Monday has calls to action. It has things to do, share, and learn. It has kind of the gossip from the day, the things that I know about what's going on down at the Capitol. And then I'm trying to put in little tips for taking care of yourself, because it is really hard. And it is a really long slog. 140 days is the lot longer than you ever could imagine. And it'll get really intense. Starting end of February or end of March into April, leading up to the end, it is full on. So we need everybody trained. We need everybody with representatives stored in their phone so they can make those easy phone calls. We have calls to action that Make It Matter Monday, but as things come up, we will also have other calls to action, and those also are on our blog. So please pay attention. We are not the only group doing this. We are nonpartisan, so it is safe to share anything we create anywhere you want. We generally get information from professionals who are getting paid. Again, we're volunteers. We're just like a bunch of moms and dads and community members, grandparents, people sitting around just trying to do our best in our free time for our kids. So thank you to everybody who came. Ash, you are such a rock star. I cannot wait to get you in my garden. And I can't wait to see you down at the Capitol. I want to adopt this kid. But I know I'm adopting. I told Tallarico I want to adopt him too. I can't adopt everybody. So my husband and son are like, rein it in a little bit, mama. But my big mama heart is huge right now for all of the people who are fighting for our kids, because it's hard. So thank you so much, Ash. This has been invaluable. I appreciate all of your effort and all of your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You guys go to ACLU Texas and see what they're up to. And Ash, if you don't mind, if you have calls to action, you reach out to me and we'll make sure that those get shared. We have a calendar on our website as well too. And I am terrible about staying on top of all of this. So all the help you guys can give me, I'll take it. Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
This is recorded. It will be on our YouTube page, and we'll be spreading this out, sending this out as soon as we can get it up there.
Night night.
Love you guys.
Thank you.